Ever think about what it's like to carry your family's name like a tombstone around your neck? 30 years of doing what's right, what's expected, what keeps the patriarch happy and the inheritance intact. That's what loyalty costs out here on the frontier. Every breath you take belongs to someone who came before you. Spring of '85, I was that man. Silas Garrett, dutiful son, keeper of the legacy. Then Elena showed up at my door in a rainstorm, and I learned that salvation and ruin can wear the same soaked dress. She stood there on my porch, drenched to the bone, nothing but a brown leather suitcase in her hand and desperation in her eyes. Water dripped from her dark hair, ran down her neck, disappeared into a dress that clung to every curve God gave her. I just stood there like a damn fool, lantern shaking in my grip, knowing that the iron legacy I'd been forged into was about to melt. People said the Garrett name meant something. Meant honor, meant land, meant keeping your word and your bloodline pure. What they didn't say was how that name could choke a man slow, make him feel like he was buried alive in his own skin. That night, watching Elena shiver by my fire, those green eyes looking at me like I was the first real thing she'd seen in years, that's when the chain started breaking. And when something like that finally snaps, it don't break quiet. Echoes in your bones worse than a rifle shot. I let her in. Gave her my hearth, my shelter, my goddamn heart. Thought I was choosing love over legacy. Turns out, I was choosing a woman who'd come to destroy everything my family built. And she did it so beautifully. I didn't see the knife until it was buried deep. But you want to know how a woman can make a man burn his own world down and thank her for the matches? Subscribe right now and drop a comment telling me what country you're watching from. After you hit that button, I promise you, you're going to have a blessed week. Because this story gets darker, hotter, and more twisted than you can imagine. Now pour yourself something strong and settle in. This ain't a love story. It's a confession. My father built this ranch with blood and broken bones, and he made damn sure I knew it. Every fence post I drove into the ground, every calf I branded, every sunrise I met with aching muscles, all of it was a reminder that the Garrett name wasn't mine to waste. You're the eldest, he'd say, standing over me like a monument to duty itself. This land goes to you if you prove you're worthy of it. Worthy meant obedient, meant marrying who he chose, drinking where he approved, speaking when spoken to, and keeping the family reputation cleaner than Sunday church. My brothers got to raise hell in town, got to stumble home drunk and stupid. Not me. I was the heir, the example, the good son who'd carry the legacy forward. 30 years I lived that way, and every year the noose got tighter. Couldn't court a woman without father's approval. Couldn't spend money without accounting for it. Couldn't even laugh too loud without someone reminding me that Garretts don't act common. I started to forget what wanting something felt like. Started to think maybe I was just a tool father sharpened, kept in the barn until he needed me. Then that storm came, and with it, a woman who looked at me like I was a man instead of a monument. The knock came hard and urgent, rattling the cabin door like something desperate was trying to get in. I grabbed my rifle first, instinct out here, then cracked the door against the wind. Rain hit my face like cold nails, and there she stood. Elena, soaked clean through, hair plastered to her face, that brown suitcase gripped in white knuckles. Her dress clung to her body in ways that made my breath catch, made my hands forget they were supposed to be holding a rifle. She didn't say nothing at first, just looked at me with those green eyes full of something I couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Please, she finally managed, voice barely cutting through the storm. I need shelter. I should have asked questions. Should have sent her to town, to the church, anywhere but here. But I stepped aside, and she walked past me, bringing the smell of rain and something sweeter, something that made the cabin feel smaller and warmer all at once. I built up the fire while she stood there dripping on my floor, shivering so hard I thought she might break apart. There's dry clothes in the chest, I said, not looking at her, not trusting myself to look. Thank you. Her voice was soft, grateful, but underneath it was something else, something that made my skin prickle. When I finally turned around, she was wearing my spare shirt, the suitcase sitting by the hearth like it belonged there. She sat close to the flames, and the firelight played across her face, made her look like something out of a dream I'd been too scared to have. "I'm Elena," she said, holding her hands to the warmth. "Silas," I replied, and the way she smiled at my name made me feel like I'd just signed something I couldn't take back. Morning came with my brothers' voices cutting through the rain. "Silas, Father wants the fence checked on the north ridge." I heard their boots on the porch, heard them stomping and cursing the weather, and my blood went cold. Elena sat at my table, coffee cup halfway to her lips, eyes wide and questioning. "Hide," I whispered, and she moved fast, grabbed that suitcase, and disappeared into the back room without a word. I opened the door before they could knock again. My brothers stood there, Thomas and Jacob, both of them soaked and annoyed. "Hell of a storm," Thomas said, trying to look past me into the cabin. "Father's convinced half the herd's scattered. Wants us all out looking." I stood in the doorway, blocking their view, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. "I'll head out soon as the rain breaks." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "You got company?" "Thought I saw smoke from 2 fires worth this morning." "Just me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Kept the fire high all night. Cold as hell." They stood there a moment longer, suspicious, then Thomas shrugged. "Suit yourself. Be at the main house by noon, or Father, I'll have your hide." I watched them ride off through the rain. Didn't breathe, right until they disappeared into the gray. When I turned back, Elena was standing in the doorway to the back room, and the way she looked at me had changed. Like we just crossed some line together, like we were bound by the secret of her presence. "Thank you," she said quietly. And I knew, standing there with my pulse still racing, that I'd just chosen her over them for the first time. It wouldn't be the last. That night, we sat by the fire and she told me about places I'd never seen. Cities where buildings touched the sky, where people walked streets lit by gas lamps and nobody knew your name or your father's name or gave a damn about your legacy. "I've been to San Francisco," she said, and her eyes went distant, like she was seeing it again. "You could be anyone there, Silas. Start over, fresh, like you were just born." I listened like a man dying of thirst, listening to someone describe water. Everything she said sounded like freedom, like oxygen after drowning. "Here, you're suffocating," she continued, leaning closer. "I can see it in your eyes. You're a man living in a grave you dug yourself, and your father's just waiting for you to lie down in it permanent." "It's not that simple," I said, but even I could hear how weak it sounded. "It is, though." Her hand found mine, and the touch sent electricity clear up my arm. "You think you owe them something because they're blood. But what have they given you except chains?" I thought about 30 years of yes, sir, and no, sir. 30 years of being told who I was instead of figuring it out myself. Thought about the future Father had planned. Marriage to the Miller girl, 3 sons minimum, die on this land like he planned to. What would I even do? I asked, and the question felt like surrender. She smiled, and it was the most dangerous smile I'd ever seen. "Anything you want. Everything you've been too scared to even dream about." Right then, I started craving a world I'd never known existed. And she knew it. "Before we go any further, I need to know you're still with me. If you want to see how far a man will fall when a woman shows him what freedom tastes like, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever wanted something so bad you'd burn your whole life down to get it? Because that's where this story's headed, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Asterisk, asterisk. Father found out 3 days later. I don't know who told him. Maybe Thomas saw something. Maybe Jacob talked. Maybe the whole damn county knew before I did. He came to my cabin at dawn, didn't knock, just walked in like he owned the place. Which, legally, he did. Elena was still asleep in my bed, and I was making coffee, and the look on his face when he saw her boots by the door could have curdled milk. "Outside," he said, voice like iron on stone. "Now." We stood in the cold morning air, and he didn't waste time. "That's Elena Hartwell in there, widow of Marcus Hartwell, the man who damn near bankrupted this family 10 years ago." My stomach dropped. "She's been here 3 days, and you didn't think to ask who she was? Didn't think to wonder why a woman like that shows up at your door in a storm?" "I don't care who she was," I said, and I meant it. "I care who she is now." Father's face went red. "You're a fool, Silas. That woman's poison. Her husband swindled us out of $15,000, and now she's here in your bed, and you think that's coincidence. Maybe she doesn't know. She knows. His voice cracked like a whip. And you're going to cast her out today, or you're no son of mine. You hear me? You choose her, you lose everything. The land, the name, all of it. I looked back at the cabin, saw the smoke rising from the chimney, thought about Elena's laugh, about the way she made me feel like a man instead of a monument. I need time to think. You've got until sundown, Father said. Her or us. Choose. I didn't wait until sundown. Packed my things that afternoon while Elena watched from the doorway, her face unreadable. You're really doing this? She asked. For me. For us. I said, shoving shirts into a bag. For whoever the hell I'm supposed to be when I'm not being what he wants. I heard horses outside, Father and my brothers, come to make sure I made the right choice. I walked out onto that porch, Elena beside me, and I looked my father dead in the eye. I choose her, I said, and the words felt like breaking shackles. Then you're dead to me, Father said. Dead to all of us. Thomas and Jacob wouldn't even look at me. Father turned his horse, and they followed. And just like that, 30 years of legacy rode away into the dust. Elena took my hand, and I should have felt loss, should have felt regret. Instead, I felt light, felt free, felt like I could finally breathe. We'll go west, she said softly. Start over. Just us. I kissed her then, right there on that porch, and it was the first choice I'd ever made that felt like mine. We rode out that evening, leaving the Garrett Ranch behind, and I didn't look back once. Thought I was riding toward freedom. Didn't know I was riding toward ruin. 4 or 5 days, we lived like the world had just been born. Rented a room in a town 2 counties over, and for the first time in my life, I woke up without duty pressing on my chest like a stone. Elena was everything, wild, beautiful, present. We'd walk the streets, holding hands like normal people, eat meals at cafes where nobody knew my name, make love in the afternoons like we had all the time in the world. This is what living feels like, I told her one morning, watching her brush her hair by the window. See, she said, smiling at me in the mirror. I told you. No chains, no legacy, just us. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. We talked about California, about opening a store or buying a small place near the coast. She had ideas, plans, spoke about them with such certainty that I could see them clear as day. I never planned anything for myself before, and the possibility of it made me dizzy. You're happy, she said one night, lying in my arms. I can feel it. Happier than I've ever been, I replied, and it was the truest thing I'd ever said. She kissed my chest, right over my heart. Good, she whispered. You deserve this. I fell asleep that night, thinking I'd finally found what I'd been missing my whole life. Didn't know that paradise built on lies don't last longer than the telling. The suitcase had been bothering me since day one, sitting in the corner of every room we stayed in, always locked, always close to her. On the 6th day, while she was out getting supplies, I opened it. I told myself I just wanted to know her better, wanted to see what she carried, what mattered to her. What I found was papers, deeds, contracts, letters, all of them bearing the Garrett family name. Documents my father had signed years ago, debts he'd paid, land agreements, business dealings. And at the bottom, a letter in her handwriting addressed to a lawyer in San Francisco, outlining how she'd secured access to remaining Garrett family assets through the air. My hand shook as I read it. Read how she'd planned this, how she'd waited for the right storm, the right moment, how she knew exactly which son to target. The lonely one, the obedient one, the one who'd never been loved the way she could pretend to love him. When Elena walked back in, she saw the papers spread across the bed and stopped cold. Silas, who are you? My voice didn't sound like mine. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't apologize. Just looked at me with those green eyes gone cold. I'm the daughter of Marcus Hartwell, she said quietly. The man your father destroyed. The man who died in debtor's prison while your family prospered on stolen money. So this was revenge. This was justice. The woman I loved disappeared right in front of me, replaced by someone I'd never really known. She left at dawn with everything that mattered. The papers, the deeds, the signed documents I'd been fool enough to put my name on when she'd asked, sweet-voiced and loving. Investments, she called them. Our future. Turns out they were transfers, authorizations, signatures that gave her legal access to what remained of Garrett Holdings after Father died, which he had 2 days ago. Heart attack. My brothers sent word, but I've been too wrapped up in paradise to care. Now I sat alone in that rented room, watching the sun come up over a town that wasn't mine, in a life that wasn't real, having lost everything for a woman who'd never existed. The worst part wasn't the money or the land. Wasn't even the betrayal. It was knowing that every moment I'd felt free, every kiss, every whispered promise, all of it had been a transaction. She'd bought my rebellion with false affection, and I'd sold my legacy for the fantasy of being wanted. I rode back to the ranch 3 days later. The place was empty, my brothers having taken what they could before the lawyers came. I stood in my old cabin, the one where she'd first appeared, and I could still smell wood smoke and rain. Could still feel her hand in mine. My father had been right. I'd been a fool, but he'd also been wrong, because in choosing her, I hadn't just lost everything. I discovered that the man I thought I was, the good son, the keeper of legacy, had never existed either. I was just as much a ghost as she'd been. Just took me longer to disappear.